Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Glory Glory Man United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Quinn. And joining me today, take a look back at the Newcastle game, the Brighton game, the season as a whole, and preview the FA Cup final is Chris Nugent. How's it going, Chris?
Not too bad, Kyle. Not too bad. Thanks for having me on as usual, mate. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's been a fairly dismal season for Manchester United, finishing the season with just 60 points, a goal difference of -1. Eighth in the table, which is our worst finish in the Premier League era, even worse than the Moy season. Only 18 wins, 14 losses, and six draws. Um, I think you were saying to me off air that we uh, our top scorer is the 26th top scorer in the Premier League this season, which is absolutely atrocious.
Shocking.
Um, the, the minor positivity is we finished the season with two wins. Actually, would have been even worse had we not done that. Look, um so there is some positives going into the cup final, but overall, it's not been good enough given the standards of Manchester United. How do you feel about it, Chris?
Yeah, it's a weird one, Kyle. Like you said, because we're in the FA Cup final, and that generally is a positive thing. But but finishing eighth in the league, like you said, our worst finish. 31 points off Man City, who won it. 31 points. I mean, that could be top and bottom of the table. That is a ridiculous, amount to be away. It's not even remotely close. So it's pretty poor season, Premiership season, really all around. So yeah, the FA Cup final to come, which should be a positive, but feels like the season has been so bad that it doesn't feel too bright. I have to say, unfortunately.
No, definitely not. It has been a fairly challenging season for United, to say the least. Um, but we could end up finishing the season strongly and having a better season than Liverpool. That's what I seen a United fan say to a Liverpool fan earlier. You know, who cares if you finish third? That's just the third loser, or second loser, sorry. And if they win the League Cup and we win the FA Cup, then we've had a better season than them. That's the way I look at it. Um, and that'll be great. But it's a huge F, of course, given our opponents in the FA Cup final, the team that finished 31 points above us, as you say. But before we take a look back at the season and give our thoughts on the manager, let's look at the positivity of winning the last two games. And definitely deserved the win against Newcastle. Um, Now we should have probably given away a penalty when Amrabat stood on the Achilles of Anthony Gordon. Casemiro, VAR was concentrating on a clean tackle from Casemiro and Anthony Gordon, and missed Amrabat catching him on the back of his foot, and you could see the ripped sock and everything from Anthony Gordon. So we got away with that one, and but I'm laughing about all the Newcastle fans crying about it, because the amount of times this season that VAR decisions or refereeing decisions have went against Man United, and nobody give a hoot, nobody could give two shits, and I have absolutely no sympathy for Newcastle United fans because they talk and talk and talk about how much they hate Man United, how much they were desperate to win that game. So sorry, guys, you're just going to have to get over it. Um, the highlight of the match was definitely the goal from Amad Diallo, which was absolutely superb. Like you said to me the other night, it's the goal that you dream of when you're growing up. Everyone wants to score a goal like that, um, on the half volley from a corner and just hits it like an arrow into the corner. Absolutely no chance for the goalkeeper. So much
Preach.
power and precision on. Just he caught it sweetly right on the center of his boot, and it didn't try to stop it and curl it like Anthony would do. He just hit it first time with power into the corner. Um, and of course, he scored the winner against Liverpool in the FA Cup quarter final, which nobody will forget. He got the assist the other night, um, for Menu's goal, and he's finished the season strongly. and I firmly believe that he should start the FA Cup final ahead of Marcus Rashford. What's your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, it's hard to disagree, Kyle. He's playing really well at the minute. Like you said, he took that goal unbelievably well the other night. It just came, just bounced up perfectly, and he just rattled it on a half volley. Great finish. He's clearly a great young player. I think even we saw that when he broke through into the first team. You could tell he was a good player, and then he went out on loan. Obviously, quite young, needed a wee bit more experience, a few more games, competitive sort of matches under his belt, but he's come back and he's doing well. And like you said, Kylie, he hadn't really got a chance for a while there, but he's got a couple of games now under his belt, and you feel like he's playing so well that there's no way you could leave him out of the team. So I think in the final he has to start, whether it's as you said, or Rashford or Anthony or whoever makes way for him. He's got to play. I mean, he's in great form. He's confident. He's playing well. He's putting a shift in. Like you said, get a great goal, but also get an assist too. He's a good dribbler. He's a threat. We're going to be up against it. Let's be honest. Against Man City, it's going to be a huge mountain to climb, and we need all our best players that we have available playing. And I think right now he's one of them. So yeah, I think he has to play for sure.
Yeah, and obviously Marcus Rashford is not in form at all, and his attitude's been questioned this season. He's even arguing with fans the other night. Some fan was giving him jiff, and he spent time during the warm up arguing with his fan. You're like, what are you doing? You're just embarrassing yourself. Just ignore him. Um, yeah, my biggest worry would be Kyle Walker bombing forward in the cup final and Rashford not tracking him. Yeah, that's probably the primary reason why I wouldn't play him.
Yeah,
Because
it's a fair point. And we know that he tends to do that. He can tend to drop off and neglect his defensive responsibilities in City, or like you said, Kyle, the likes of Kyle Walker will just destroy you. I mean, that guy's a defender, but he's an unbelievable attacker too. You just can't slack off. You can't slack off. No player in the United squad can slack off against Man City. No player in the league can slack off against Man City. They're just too strong. And yeah, Dallo looks way more likely to put in a shift. And dare I say it, Anthony would put in more of a shift as well than what Rashford generally seems to be doing these days. So yeah, we can't have any passengers whatsoever. So yeah, it's important that everybody's given 100%.
yeah, we can't beat City with 10 men. It's as simple as that. Um, so another player who has come off the bench in the last two games and scored is Rasmus Højlund. He was dropped to the bench against Newcastle. Bruno played as a false nine, and Bruno was magnificent against Newcastle. Um, would have been my man of the match. I think Diallo was given the award, but in fairness, I would have given it to Bruno. And Bruno again played as a false nine today. I don't think it really worked in this particular game, but Højlund come off the bench and he scored in both games. So he's now United's top scorer with 16 goals, and it's not bad. It's not a bad total for a player who gets absolutely no service. He's playing his first season in English football. He's he was a 20-year-old Danish striker playing in Serie A, and he's come to United, not being helped out by his teammates for most of the season, and he's got a tally of 16 goals going into the FA Cup finals. That's pretty good going, in my opinion. So I want to get your thoughts on it then, Chris. With him having a bit of a Solskjaer role in the last couple of games where he's coming off the bench and scoring, would you then continue that in the FA Cup final, or would you start him?
It's a good question, Kyle. Yeah, I like the fact that he's a threat coming off the bench. I think you're right. I think the problem that he's had this season is, number one, yeah, he's young. He had to adapt to the league, and of course, the usual Man United, everything's high profile, big transfer fee. Start comparing him to Haaland across the road because it's Manchester, and you get all these ridiculous things around him that I think were completely unfair. But if you actually taking all the hype around it out and look at what he's done well. He's grown. He's a player who's definitely on an upward trajectory. I think that you're right, Kyle. I feel like Man United have relied on moments of quality this season. Bruno Fernandes probably providing a lot of those, and Garnacho and others. But that doesn't really suit a classic number 9, which in some ways Højlund kind of is. So, those guys rely on service. They need to be part of the play. It needs to be a team effort. When you're just having guys, we're not breaking defenses down and somebody pings one for 25 yards, that's not really great for a striker like Hoyland. So I think he's done well, as you say, Kyle, given the role that he's had to play this year. Yeah, back to your question, would I start him in the final? Um, I know I would probably not. I would probably try what we've done in the last couple of games. I mean, it's worked. One thing that's good for him is psychologically he'll be fired up, and he provides a threat. Um, and let's be honest, it's very likely that at some point in the game against City, if not early on, we will be down. So we'll need somebody to come on and change things, and it'll be good to have him as another option. Uh, Given again the fact that he is relying on service, and with so many injuries, I don't feel like we're playing particularly well as a unit at the moment. That it's probably still not great conditions for him to start. So yeah, I feel like probably coming off the bench might suit him.
He come on after 82 minutes against Newcastle, yeah. And today he came on after, see what minute it was he came on. It was 60 minutes today. Yeah, I think Bruno was getting a rest ahead of cup final, like a few others, and some people come off the bench, like Varane, were getting minutes as well ahead of the cup final. Um, it, yeah, I can see the argument for and against. I would. Like, he's our only real number 9 that we have, and you want to have that threat. But Bruno as a false 9 might be something that he might try against City. I can see we're going to pack the midfield. We're going to play on the counter attack, and I can see a scenario where he does use Bruno in the false 9 role. But the only thing is, if Hoyland comes off the bench, after 60 minutes in the cup final, the game could be over by that point. So
Unfortunately,
you might as
unfortunately,
well
yeah,
just start him then. I don't know. It's hard to know what team he's going to pick. He actually does have some selection dilemmas now with people coming back from injury. There's actually quite a few centre backs to choose from. There was 3 on the bench today. I couldn't understand why he started Casemiro again at centre half when he's got 3 centre halves on the bench. And I think,
yeah. It's got to be a fitness thing. I can only imagine it's a fitness thing, and the other guys maybe aren't quite just fit enough, and he thinks another week is what they need. I can only imagine it's that because yeah, otherwise you think, why would you do that? It's got to be a fitness thing.
yeah, absolutely. And Hoyland, he done a wee 1-2 with Ericsson for his goal as well. So obviously, the two Danes teaming up there, and obviously have a good understanding. And Diogo Dallo scored today as well. Often finds himself in the number 9 position, even though he's a fullback. And today it actually paid off. It was a ball over the top from Casemiro. Hoyland and the defender were jostling and hit the defender's arm and fell straight into the path of the on-running Dallo, who slid it past the keeper and done his trademark celebration, letting everyone know how great he is. But to be honest, I just not going to be a fan of him because scoring the odd goal here and there, I think he scored 3 this season, does not make up for all the defensive lapses. How he comes inside all the time, just lets cross after cross after cross to come in. Is often out of position. He plays everywhere except where he should be. And I really don't think if Ten Hag does move on, he's not going to get this free role, Dallo, next season under a new coach. But yeah, today him playing as a second striker, actually at times obviously paid off with him scoring that goal as a well taken goal. But given that he's a fullback, and I'm just not convinced. I think the fullback situation at the moment, all round, is pretty depressing. With Wan-Bissaka has lost his confidence. He's out of form. Um, Dallo has never convinced me as a defender, and these are probably going to be the 2 fullbacks in the FA Cup final, and one of them is going to be playing out of position, and that's going to severely hamper us. No left back at all this season. For yeah, we've had Luke Shaw for a couple of games. Haven't had Malacia at all, and that's another thing that worries me going to the cup final is this fullback situation. Now we've got more centre backs coming back. Martinez got 58 minutes, I think, under his belt, and it has he's undoubtedly going to start the FA Cup final. Varane played the last 25 minutes. He might partner Martinez one last time, the last dance. Hopefully, the two of them can come away with the trophy at the end of the game. Um, and obviously, Kambala is fit and available again. So is Johnny Evans, who got minutes today, and Harry Maguire might even make it back for the cup final. So after having Lindelof as well, he could be back. Not, but hopefully he doesn't play. Um, so after having no centre backs available, or just one, now we're going to have possibly all of them fit and available for the cup final. Who would be your centre back pairing then at Wembley?
It's a very good question. Yeah, I think I like Martinez. I think if Martinez is fit enough to play, and given that he got nearly 60 minutes today, and he'll have a bit more another week to train, if he can stay fit, then I would definitely start Martinez. I think he probably is our strongest centre back. Who partners him then? That's a good question. There's so many.
If I
Yeah,
could just interject, I think on reputation, you pick Varane, and also on the fact that him and Martinez have played really well together last season. Um, Varane was obviously both of them were obviously fit for majority of last season, and played together really well at times, and especially in big games. But for picking on form, it would be Maguire and Martinez.
I was going to say that I would probably lean towards Maguire. Ironic as that feels because I've criticised him a lot on this podcast, but probably right, Kyle. The thing that I find really frustrating about Varane, and it's no surprise to me that he is now gonna move on. He's so unreliable. He could start that cup final and be injured within 20 minutes, and then it's a waste of a sub. So actually, I probably wouldn't start Varane for that reason. You're right. Possibly Maguire. I have to be honest. I quite like Johnny Evans. I think Evans has done a good job this year. I really do. I like his experience. I think he's a solid player. Yes, at times he's been, found wanting in various situations, but that happens to the best defenders in the world when you're playing against great footballers. But I wouldn't if it was Martinez and Evans, I wouldn't be too disappointed. But Maguire potentially, yeah, one of those two would probably be my first choice.
Although Maguire is probably the least likeliest centre back to be available for the FA Cup final. We'll see how it goes. See if he trains towards the end of the week. But yeah, he was playing really well up until he got injured. And that left us was almost nobody at centre back. I think it got to the stage where Casemiro had to play alongside Evans, who failed the fitness test, but played anyway. That's how desperate we
Yeah,
were. Um,
and fair play to him for doing it.
yeah, absolutely. But one partnership I haven't seen, and is there 35 partnerships at centre back this season or something ridiculous like that? Just to put that into context, Arsenal have had three.
I know. I mean, and not to remotely. I know. I'm sure we'll come on to talk about Ten Hag and his future at some point. But it's not wrong to say that we've had problems with injuries. I mean, it's there for all to see. Not excusing other things, but it certainly is. That's not helpful. And you just highlighted there really well. I think, Kyle. It's definitely not helpful.
Now, one partnership I haven't seen this season, I don't think, is Evans alongside Martinez. And Evans very strong. He has a very strong left foot. I think he's officially a right-footed player, but he's very good with his left foot. Obviously, got that assist for Bruno's volley against Burnley earlier in the season with a left-footed pass over the top. And he tends to play on that side, Evans, where Martinez plays. So, um, a double left-footed partnership, something you don't see very often. So, I'd be surprised if they played together. Usually it's one or the other. Um, so yeah, he's got a selection dilemma. It seems, especially if Maguire's available. I think he'll go with Varane and Martinez. If he was not intending on playing Varane, he wouldn't have brought him on today to get minutes
Yeah,
under his belt.
fair point. Yep.
Um, but if Maguire is available, he may consider that. He may consider playing him. But I think Martinez is going to play as long as he's fit because he's our best defender. There's no doubt about that. Even played
Yeah.
well today, even though he's only half fit. He's no match rhythm at all, and he cleared one off the line. I remember him doing that against Wolves early in the season when Onana made a blunder. Um, I think we're going to have to be compact, which is I've criticised Ten Hag on numerous occasions this season. The midfield playing very high and the defence very low. When normally the most basic thing in football, when you don't have the ball, is to be compact to make yourself difficult, make the team difficult to play against. Was Ten Hag has just completely abandoned that philosophy, for much of this season. Um, and he's done that at Ajax. Ruud Gullit was criticizing him doing that, on live television in Holland, and he just thinks it's worth the risk. It may have worked for Ajax in Holland. He won those three titles, but I just don't think it's going to work in the Premier League. And United absolutely have to be compact in the FA Cup final. He does it when he wants to. We've seen him doing it in away games against top sides at Anfield. Got 0-0 draw because they were very defensive and compact. And he's going to have to adopt something similar here. City have finished the season strongly, as quite often have. They've won 4 titles in a row. Um, we've talked at length about how crap we've been, and I think we're just going to have to make it as difficult for them as possible to get space and then play on the counter attack. So the question is, how is he going to set up the midfield? Um, I can see Amrabat playing now because in recent games he's been very good at breaking up the play, not so good on the ball, it must be said. But we do need someone like that who can break up the play and win the ball off City and then play a 5 yard pass to someone who's better. So Manu obviously is going to play. So Amrabat, Manu, and Casemiro probably going to be the midfield three, or and maybe McTominay. Now a lot of fans have been calling for Casemiro to be dropped because he's been really awful, albeit he's playing at centre half for most of the last number of games. But Ten Hag didn't even take him off today. He put him in midfield when he made substitutions. So he played the whole game, Casemiro. So Casemiro, Ten Hag has not lost faith on him. So I'm anticipating a midfield three of Amrabat, Casemiro, and Manu, and I think that might be the right call because we have to cut off the space for Manchester City. It's absolutely essential, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Kyle. It's 100% essential, and it's a really, really difficult thing to do against Man City, as we all know. They're incredibly good on the ball. One thing about Man City, and I think it's part of Guardiola's whole thing, is he loves guys who can dribble. So he doesn't just rely on what you think of this tiki taka short pass football. He doesn't just rely on that. A lot of players like Foden, etc., will just and Bernardo Silva, etc., and David Silva is the same. They just run rings around you. So I think it's we do need players that can be a wee bit physical, who can get stuck in, who can kind of just win the ball off those guys, and break up Man City's rhythm. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it is. I think it is important, and I think Amrabat is pretty good at that. Casemiro, when he's on form, is good. He's may not have the yard of pace he used to have, but he's certainly good at reading play. Making interceptions and that. That's important. And Manu obviously can do that as well, and he's incredibly good on the ball too. So yeah, I think that sounds pretty fair. Yeah, I think it is just going to be a difficult game. I don't not to put a downer on things, but I do feel like we're gonna really have to be on it. Getting some of these guys coming back now, like if Martinez, like you said, Kyle, that's a positive, and I feel quite lucky that the time in May just turned out to be good. That we're getting some of these guys fit, maybe, but yeah, I still think it's going to be a tough game. So yeah, his tactics are going to be crucial. Coming back just generally to what you're saying about his philosophy and how it applied at Ajax and the criticism and stuff that he got. The interesting thing was I remember hearing, I think we again have talked about this on the podcast before. I remember hearing stories, or maybe it was an interview with Ten Hag before he joined, when he had been at Ajax, and they'd asked him about his philosophy, and he'd said that yeah, I do have a philosophy, but when I come into a club, I always, try to work with what I've got and be pragmatic. And maybe he should have done that a bit longer. I feel like that's probably where it's went wrong, is that he's tried to then give it a season and went, okay, I've had my season of pragmatism and now I'm going to put my philosophy on. But unfortunately, as we know, and if it was to take any of the criticism away from him, is that the club's been such a mess that you can't just do that overnight. You have to have the right players, the right recruitment, the right philosophy. The academy has to start feeding into it. That's a long process to just go from kind of a mishmash of things to just overnight trying to push a philosophy on a group of players. So I think it was a bad move if that's what he's done. I think he should have been pragmatic for longer, and maybe we would have had a better season. That's my general feeling on it.
Yeah, last season was reasonable. We got the two cup finals, we won one of them, and we finished third in the Premier League. That was because he played to the players' strengths, and he was pragmatic. Now he's in the second season. He's tried to implement the style that he wants to operate with, and it hasn't worked out. Right from August, you could see it wasn't working. We were dominated by Wolves at home, and we lost to Spurs. We were totally outplayed by Brighton at the Emirates. He keeps harping back to that game, harking back to it, saying that, oh, if Garnacho's goal had stood that was ruled out for offside, we would have won that game. Um, and he thought that his plan worked to a T in that match. To me, United were very defensive in that game. They just knocked the ball around to the defence for large parts at the Emirates, the goalkeeper to the back four, and then they had the odd attack, and Rashford scored from one of them, and then Garnacho scored from a counter attack very late on. That was ruled out, and then Arsenal scored from a set piece, I think, and then a breakaway goal from Jesus. But we lost the game 3-1. So I don't know why several times this season Ten Hag keeps harking back to that, saying we played so well against a top team and we deserved to win that game. That's not really how I saw it. I actually thought Garnacho's goal that seemingly made it 2-1 on the 90th minute. I thought that was against the run of play, and we were stealing it in that situation.
No,
So
you're 100% right.
I don't really understand what he's talking about.
You're
Um,
totally right. And if I look if I make a comparison to another manager in the Premier League who's known for having a very strong philosophy, in Pep Guardiola, and it never ever escapes me that when Guardiola first came into Man City, his philosophy wasn't working. It wasn't working because the players weren't there to do it, and he had the luxury of changing eight players in his first transfer window. Kicked Joe Hart out, straight away, who was the captain, who was kicked him out immediately because he doesn't suit my style of play, and that's why he was able to implement his style quick and get it to work. We have not had that luxury. Ten Hag has not had that luxury. And I think that if Ten Hag decided that he was going to implement the style anyway, without having that culture around him that allowed him to do it and support him, then that in itself is the mistake. Like you said, Kyle, he should have had another season of working slightly more towards that, but being pragmatic. And if that's what he's decided to do, and that may well be his downfall. That may well have been the reason why he maybe doesn't stay longer than next week.
if he took the same approach as last season, United undoubtedly would have finished much higher in the table. This philosophy of the midfield playing very high and the defence playing low is just madness. I remember Gary Neville commentating on United against Liverpool and looking at the structure of the United team, and he says, "I've never in my life seen a team set up that way. What am I even watching?" He says, "It's just incredible." He says, "What is this?" Um,
No, but by the same token, one of the three titles at Ajax, albeit against you quite different opposition, the Premier League stronger opposition, but he got to a semi final of the Champions League as well. So there obviously is something in it that works. And I'm not a big believer in philosophies. I have to be honest, and I believe that. I believe that we get carried away, and it's a bit romantic to talk about this great new philosophy. And then managers get carried away, go, "We're going to try to play the way this other manager plays." Let's be honest, football is a pretty simple game at its base. At the end of the day, if you've got better players who are fitter, stronger, can keep the ball off you, can put it in the back of the net, you're going to win football matches. And the details and the machinations of how you go about that, are kind of secondary in a sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the question that I think Man United will have at the minute, Kyle, that Ineos will have, is whether they think that if Ten Hag is so forthright of his style, whether they decide that that style is never going to work and he's never going to work, or whether they think, okay, we will provide him with the Guardiola scenario and give him the culture because we do believe that with the right players it might work. I think that's the dilemma for them.
it's interesting that United have won the last couple of games and they performed, you know, they played well defensively against Arsenal, and then they won the two games following that. And There was a story that I read. I don't know how true it is, and I've heard this a couple of times now, maybe from a couple of different journalists, that Jason Wilcox had a conversation with Ten Hag and told him, "This is the way you have to play. You don't, the way you're playing is not getting results. You need to have you need to play a different way. This is the philosophy that that we're going to implement, and you have to abide by that." And all of a sudden, United were getting results in the last couple of games after this conversation apparently happened. So, and that's what the noise that's been coming out from reliable journalists, is that the likes of Dan Ashworth and Jason Wilcox, they're going to decide how United play, and the coach has to go along with that. The coach isn't going to decide the philosophy. So that's very, very interesting, isn't it?
It is very, very interesting. Absolutely, yeah. It's really interesting. I think that's the way modern clubs seem to be set up, and it makes sense simply because, like I said a minute ago, embedding a philosophy is a long term thing, and it goes from the top of the club to the bottom. Not to keep talking about Guardiola, but Guardiola was given the luxury of the club saying, "We trust you so much, we will build an entire club around your philosophy, right from the academy, right through every single player, so that you have the best chance of your philosophy actually working." That's clearly not going to be the case at most clubs, and it's clearly not going to be the case at Man United. But if Wilcox has in his mind a philosophy that he thinks works, fair enough. I mean, I don't know that much about what that philosophy necessarily is, but but if he thinks it works and he can prove that it works, well then great. And if the job of a coach is very simply to abandon his own principles and just coach the team, understand the philosophy that the club wants to implement and make that work, fair enough. And if Ten Hag is able to do that, well then Ten Hag's as good a person as anybody in my book, if that's what it's going to be.
I don't know if Wilcox had explained a philosophy to him, um, or not, but he probably asked him to be more compact, and that seems what United have been doing the last couple of games and actually getting results. I do not understand Ten Hag's approach one bit. He's a very, very confusing manager, and you mentioned Guardiola got rid of Joe Hart on arrival and brought in Claudio Bravo. He was then able to just get rid of Claudio Bravo after one
Exactly.
season and bring in
100%.
Ederson. Now, United have spent 40 odd million on Onana. They're not going to move him on this summer.
No, absolutely not. That's
Um,
right.
but then I don't think Ten Hag would want to anyway, because he's his boy from Ajax. He's like, he brought him in so that he could play his philosophy with the goalkeeper playing the ball out from the back.
But that said, Bravo was obviously Guardiola's man as well from Barcelona, and he did move him on because he recognised his flaws. Do you know what I mean? But like you said, Kyle, we'll never know, because even if Ten Hag said, "Oh, this was a mistake, I want rid of him," it's never going to happen, because United just won't do that. That's the difference. That's the luxury that Guardiola has had at Man City. All these years. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, but obviously between Guardiola and the City scouts, they're able to identify that not only is Ederson brilliant on the ball, but he's a great goalkeeper as well, and they could have the whole package there. But United are not going to, sell a goalkeeper that costs 40 odd million and bring in another one after 1 year. I just don't see that happening.
No, I mean,
You know,
neither.
for 19 clubs out of 20, their budget doesn't allow for that. You
Exactly.
know.
Exactly.
um, so we've identified that Nana will start the FA Cup final. The back four will probably be Wan-Bissaka, Martinez, and Dallo, and then between it'll be a choice between Maguire and Varane to partner Martinez. In midfield, it'll be a compact setup, almost three defensive midfielders in a way of Menu, Amrabat, and Casemiro, and I think that's a smart thing to do in the circumstances. The question is, who is the front players going to be? I think leaning towards Bruno as a false nine, and Ahmad on the right and Garnacho on the left. And obviously Bruno can drop in the midfield as well to help out if necessary, and then we'll have the pace on the counter attack always if we need it. If we can win the ball back, if our DMs can break up the play, you'd be looking for like Ahmad and Garnacho with ball over the top, and then hopefully we can score from those situations. And Hoyland obviously will hopefully come off the bench at some point, and he'll be fresh as a daisy playing against a tired Man City team. Hopefully, hopefully we're still in the game at that point, and he'll be a threat in the counter attack as well. So that's the way I see Ten Hag setting up. Now, some fans are worried that Rashford is going to start this final ahead of Ahmad. Um, a few weeks ago, I would have said the same. But the fact that today, I think he was the fifth sub, he only got a handful of minutes. He hasn't been playing at all of late. He's had two injuries at the same time, apparently. And he's had no form, obviously, going into it. He's had very few minutes. Don't see a situation where he's going to play in the cup final. Ten Hag would be mad to select him.
It'd be completely crazy. It just seems completely ridiculous. I mean, the scenario that reminds me of is the one that I always love to talk about is Maurizio Pochettino whenever he dropped. I can't remember the guy's name now.
Lucas Moura.
Lucas Moura, exactly. He scored a hat trick, I think, to get them to the final of the Champions League, and then he put in Harry Kane, who was not even remotely fit. That would just be absolutely crazy. And in fairness, at least Harry Kane has had good form up to the injury. Rashford hasn't been in good form for a long, long time. So I think it would be a crazy, crazy move to drop a guy in Ahmad who is, buzzing with form. The other thing about him as well is not even just that he's buzzing with form, he's getting a run in the team. He's a young guy who still feels he's got something to prove. So I think he's got extra motivation as well. He's not like an established player coming back from injury. Do you know what I mean? He's actually got that. He's got something extra behind him because he feels like he's got something to prove. So I think it just that all that comes together to be, somebody who's going to probably perform well. And I think you'd be crazy to drop him, particularly for Marcus Rashford, given the form he's had this year. Yeah, I can't see that happening. I'll be really shocked if it did.
Yeah, he's not in good form, and as I say, you'll be playing with 10 men if he plays. Kyle Walker will just get forward with ease and unchallenged, and that's a dangerous situation to put yourselves in. Um, The good news is that Anthony didn't even get a look in today. He didn't come off the bench at all. So that signals to me that he's not going to be selected in the FA Cup final. Um, yeah, there was the likes. Martinez obviously played 59 minutes to get some minutes under his belt, ahead of the final with if you to play on him. Varane came on after 69 minutes, so he could get some minutes. Johnny as well, in case he's needed in the final. Rasmus came on as well, and Rashford got 15 minutes. Um, Menu got a rest after 75 minutes. Bruno after 60 minutes he got a rest. And you can see what he's doing here. You can see all these substitutions are all looking ahead to the final, either starting people for 60 minutes and taking them off, or bringing people on with 30 minutes to go. And you can see what he's doing. But Anthony didn't even get a look in, so that tells me that he's not going to play. And I'm not complaining about that. Are you, Chris?
Not overly, Kyle. No. Yeah, I have a funny thing that is, there's something about him that I think I like his work ethic. But I just don't think, I don't think he's the right man for the job. And I think again, anybody who would think about even consider starting him over Diallo would be crazy. Yeah, no, I can't see
It
it.
says that all that a player that he brought from Ajax for 86 million is now not even coming off the bench towards the end of the season. He can't even justify playing him. I think it was against Newcastle. Anthony, was it Newcastle? Maybe it wasn't Newcastle. I think no, he didn't come off the bench in that game either. So really, yeah, there's no chance of him playing in the FA Cup final. He's not even considering bringing him on now. But there was a game that he came on there as a substitute in a recent match. I think the first four touches he had, he gave the ball away on all four occasions. Yeah, that's just how poor he is at the moment. So I wouldn't consider it, and I don't think Ten Hag is going to consider it either. So he's firmly out of the picture. What has frustrated me about the Ahmad situation is that it's nearly the end of the season for Ahmad's got a proper chance where he's starting games consistently. I think he started the last three now, um, and not only was he playing Anthony ahead of Ahmad earlier in the season, he gave Amari Forzan his debut rather than play Ahmad. And me and you were having pints that day against when we were playing Fulham. United got beat in
Mm.
that match. It ended a run of good form for United. Hoyland got injured, and his idea was to bring in Amari Fozan, and he was absolutely rubbish. He's not good enough for Manchester United. He believed in it at the end of the season. So he'd rather give someone his debut than play Ahmad, who showed his quality at by scoring against Liverpool and doing so well on loan Sunderland. So we knew what he could do. Forzan just come out of the blue and played ahead of Ahmad. That's why I don't understand Ten Hag. I don't understand his thought process. What is he doing?
I know. You definitely do wonder. It makes me think that there's been. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying there's been a personal thing between him and Ahmad, I wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me. It seems like he's clashed with a number of players over the last couple of years. I think, and maybe that's the thing about his philosophy too. I think he's just a very headstrong sort of a character, which is a good thing in many ways. All the great managers are, maybe there's been something personal. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of a wild sort of theory to say that, but yeah, it does seem odd from a football perspective, because Ahmad has been so good since he came in, and like you said, Kylie showed flashes of it before, so it seems strange that he didn't consider giving him a start earlier in the year. But yeah, but that aside, he looks like he's a shoe in right now, to start the final. So hopefully he gets more football because he certainly deserves it.
I hope you're right. I was hoping that he would score or get an assist today, so he would cement his place in the FA Cup final. Because I don't fully trust Ten Hag to select him. So we'll see what happens. Um, Donny here says that Amrabat was awful today, and I just think has he maybe played himself out of the starting 11 in the final? Ten Hag does love to play McTominay. Yeah, there is that possibility that he could. Ten Hag does seem to like McTominay. That in the midfield three he might select McTominay instead of Armat. That is certainly a possibility. Um, I would personally go with Amrabat. McTominay's greatest strength is being in the opponent's box and scoring goals. Um, I think Amrabat is better at breaking up play, and that's the type of player that you need in this sort of game. Albeit because they're both terrible on the ball, if being honest. So
Yeah.
um, the qualities that we need from a midfielder in this game is the ones that Amrabat possesses, not
Yeah,
McTominay.
I mean, sometimes I think McTominay in the past has been good at breaking up play, but he's a bit rash. That's the thing I worry about with him against Man City. He's rash. He can be. I know he doesn't exceed. You tell me better than me, Kai, what his red card record is, but whatever it is, it's about half of what it probably should be in many ways. He always just, I just feel like he's a bit rash, and he's a candidate for a booking or a sent off.
Absolutely, and but so is Amrabat though. He
Well, yeah,
certainly
for sure.
um, you know, people used to bet on Paul's goals to get a yellow card because it was easy money. Amrabat is becoming that player as well. Eh, that would be an easy way to make money in the cup final. Just put a bet on Amrabat to get a booking, just as long as he doesn't get a second one, because he does put himself about. I think he was very lucky not to get a red against Crystal Palace. He went through the back of someone. I think it was Eze, and it was a very, very, very. It was an agricultural challenge. Let's put it that way. Um,
To say the least. Yeah, like say, I've seen so many challenges. I've went, oh, I think that's a red, and then he's got away with it. And I went, he's lucky to get away with that. So yeah, every time I see him, I think he is a candidate for a red card. He likes to go in and put himself about. Nothing wrong with that, but he often he usually plays pretty close to the line. Which can be a good thing in some ways, but yeah, I think against a team like Man City in a cup final, you just don't want that risk. So yeah.
yeah, if he's going to get a card in the cup final, I want it to be quite late on in the game, not early in the game. That would be
Exactly.
disastrous.
Exactly. Yeah.
Danny here making a joke. He says Anthony's Twitter video with the tagline "Never let them know your next move" is ironic considering it showed him sitting in a chair. I guess he was right, as he has sat down for the full 90 minutes in the last two games.
It's hard to argue. It's hard to argue that. In fairness, it's hard to argue.
Yeah, I think he's totally out of the picture now when it comes to the cup final. I think there would have to be a virus breaking out on the training pitch, so it rules a number of players out of the game for him to start. It doesn't look likely at the moment. Um, so I'm not overly optimistic. I'm just I think I'm even less optimistic than last season. Of course, this is a repeat of last season's cup final. Like last season was the first ever Manchester Derby Cup final, and now we've got two in a row. It's like buses, isn't it? But last season, I think we were better last season, and we had a slight hope that we could win this game. This time around, we just feel as if there's absolutely no chance of us winning this. I would give it a somewhere between a 5 and 10% chance. I would say everything has to go right on the day. We
That's
have to
very
be,
optimistic, Kyle. That's very optimistic.
yeah. I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be. Um, Everything has to go right on the day. We have to be. We have to defend really well. We need to have VAR rule out a City goal or two. Um, we obviously need to be we need to be clinical. We need to take our chances. We need to get a penalty if we can, like we did in last year's final. Um, yeah, and then they need to have an off day. Holland needs to miss a few chances. Onana needs to have a brilliant game. Everything has to go right, doesn't it, for us to win this?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I haven't looked at the odds on it, but City are bound to be strongly odds on favourite. That they have to be. Yeah, that's exactly it. I just think we're really up. We really have a bit of a mountain to climb. You know, at times in the past, even Kyle, when we've had a bad game against sort of a lower team in the league, for want of a better word, and then we had a game against a higher rated team the following week. I would always been the voice of optimism when you would have said we're going to get tanked next week against Man City or Liverpool or whatever, and I would always said no, we get up for these games, and often without blowing my own trumpet, I turned out to be right that we did turn off those games. So I was always the voice of optimism, but in this one, I just feel like our form is not good enough. The season has not been good enough. We've had too many players that we would need to be on form and not injured have been injured, or just even Martinez is coming back. As great and all as he was today, like that is a risk as well. It's not ideal preparation for a team like Man City to have your best centre back not quite full match fitness and had a good season under his belt. So we just need so much to go our way, and they just need to be so unlucky that I usually am the voice of optimism, but I'm just not feeling overly optimistic on this one. But listen, anything can happen in football. You just never know. Something freak can happen. Haaland could get injured early on. Just something freak happen. He gets injured all of a sudden. The dynamic changes. You just never know. So things can happen, but I wouldn't be betting against Man City. Put it like that.
Yeah, I mean, 11 years ago in 2013, Wigan beat Man City in the FA Cup final. Um, it was a goal from a corner very, very late on in the match, and Wigan won 1-0. So these things can happen against all the odds. But
Absolutely. You just never
that
know.
w- that was a Mancini Man City. Under Guardiola, they're much more ruthless, and they have better individuals. They know how to get the job done. Today again, they showed how ruthless they are. They all going into the final day of the season or a final and a cup competition. They know how to get over the line in most of the time. And against a team like us who are just so up and down, mostly down this season, I just don't see them not winning. Yeah, they must be a 90% chance of Man City winning this. And you mentioned the odds there. City are 3-10 on. This is via Potty Power, and United are 13-2.
Yeah.
So those are,
Yeah.
um,
I'm surprised they're not even longer, to be honest. Yeah,
yeah,
you just can't see. I just can't see. Unfortunately, listen, I'll watch the game. I'll enjoy it. I'll be hopeful from the word go that something that it goes our way. I never watch a game expecting or hoping United are going to lose ever. I always be optimistic when the game starts, and I will be again for this one. But like I say, I wouldn't be shelling out much money to the bookies for United to win, unfortunately.
yeah. We cannot concede a goal after 20 seconds again, like we did last year in the final, because Lindelof headed one straight to Guduan and he buried it, and we were 1-0 down already. And I was thinking, it's going to be 5 or 6, but we got it back to 1-1, and then Guduan scored again. I know De Gea should have kept that out. And then there was a City obviously dominated possession, but when Garnacho came on for Ericsson, we had a few more chances, and we were really, really pushing at the end for an equaliser. I think there was a goal mouth scramble, and McTominay hit the crossbar of the header, and we wouldn't really have deserved it if we'd have got it. They fairly dominated the game, and and the majority of the play. But it's going to be more of the same, I feel. But we cannot concede early on. Ideally, we score first. Most of the time that we've beaten Man City in the last 10 years, we have scored the first goal or even the first two goals. Um, th- that's I feel that's what we need to do. There has been the odd occasion where we've went. We had last season at Old Trafford, we went 1-0 down with Jack Grealish goal. We came back to win 2-1. And then the Pogba derby, where they were 2-0 down. They were going to win the league by at home to us, and a nightmare scenario for us. But obviously under Mourinho, and we came back in the second half with Pogba scoring two goals and Chris Smalling. But usually when we beat City, we take the lead. We go one or two goals up, and that's what we should be aiming for. We need to keep them out as long as possible. I feel as if it's inevitable we're going to concede at some point, but we need to score first, I think. And if you're a batting man, I would certainly wouldn't do a United player for first goal. To be honest, even though I've just said I want United to score the first goal, then we need to. If you're going to do first goal, it has to be Phil Foden. He probably be the
Sounds
favourite.
likely. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I was saying earlier about Holland making injury, but yeah, you're right. It's Foden's is the real threat at the minute. So yeah,
And
he's the one most
and
likely to score for sure.
so we mentioned Foden and Haaland. We haven't even mentioned De Bruyne and Bernardo
I
Silva yet.
know,
It's
yeah,
just a team
I
of
know.
superstars, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like even their defenders can hurt you for flip's sake. It is. It's just yeah. They're just a really good team. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and in recent weeks he's been playing a left centre half at left back, and he's been banging them in. He got two in one game, I think it was against Fulham. Um, yeah, he's a very good player as well.
It just
Um,
reminds me of United when we were at our best. You could
yeah,
have Dennis Irwin popping up and scoring a worldly of a free kick. That's what you want. You want to
yeah,
have goal threats across the whole
yeah,
team, and that's what they've got.
yeah. Josko Garvadal, yeah. He plays for Spain, I think. He, he's just been scoring for fun, and he's an unorthodox, left back. If only we had the ability to not have a left back. I don't think Guardiola's had a left. There's us complaining that we haven't had a left back for most of the season. I don't think Guardiola's had a left back for 3 years, but he still makes it
No,
work.
no, no. In fairness to Guardiola, I like Guardiola. He does kind of tend to like to throw the rule book out on a lot of things. To be fair, and it seems to work for him too.
But just this is something I've been thinking about with the lack of left back at United, and I just want to put it to you. Um, do you think there's a case of playing maybe um, Varane and Evans together, or Maguire and Evans, and then playing Martinez at left back? Do you think maybe you should consider that?
I think it could be a possibility, Kyle. Yeah, I mean, obviously Martinez is a natural left-footed player. I know you were saying about Evans. I never considered Evans in my mind as a left-footed player, but I know what you're saying. It's a fair point. Whereas Martinez is a left-footed player. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Martinez, let's be honest, I think Martinez can do a great job wherever he played across this across. In fact, I would nearly put Martin. You can nearly put Martinez as left midfield. He probably did a job because he's just a
Yeah.
bulldog. He just runs all day. So yeah. I don't think that would be a bad decision. I know it. I know partly that's come from the fact that you despise Dallo so much. You just don't want to see him play, and
Well,
certainly, but it makes logical sense because against a team like Man City, we need to be defensively strong, and actually, Dallo is just not disciplined enough for that, whereas Martinez would be for sure, obviously. So yeah, I think that's a really good. I think that's a fair suggestion. I mean, I think if he set up that way. I wouldn't complain. I can see the merits of it. Yeah, I think that Varane, if he stays fit and doesn't get injured, obviously can do a good job. We know his quality. Evans, for me, like I said earlier, has been good. I really like Evans. He's done great, and it's a godsend having Martinez. But the only thing might be fitness levels might be tested for Martinez, and you get a wee bit more exposed out on the left, maybe than the centre back. That'd be the only query over that, maybe.
yeah. The reason why I'm suggesting Martinez a left back is not really to do with Dallo. It's more just wanting a left-footed player in that position. To be honest, at the moment, I would select Dallo over Wan-Bissaka at right back, because
That's what. Yeah,
Wan-Bissaka isn't even good defensively at the moment. He's
he's
just
not.
completely lost his confidence. Um, but if Dallo is going to start at full back, which he will, in the cup final, he's going to have to be disciplined. All this roaming into midfield or into the number 9 position, he cannot do that against Manchester City, or will be exposed. You know, um, yeah. The thing is, what Ten Hag has been doing, he keeps swapping Wan-Bissaka and Dallo about. You never know who's going to play right back or left back from one week to the next. The last thing I definitely want to see is Wan-Bissaka a left back. That has been a disaster, and yet Ten
I
Hag has
know.
tried that on several occasions.
To be honest, my feeling, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, is I don't think either of them really are what we want ideally going forward at in fullback. I don't think that either Dallo or Wan-Bissaka are the future. I don't think they are. I think we need new players in both those positions. To be honest, well, sorry, we say both those positions. We have a left back. Let's be honest, Dallo is a right back. I think we need somebody else there. I don't think either of those guys really are who you'd want to start at right back. Yeah, I don't think they are.
Yeah, Danny here says that Carverdall is a Croat international, £100 million
Oh,
signing, only started to come good the last few months of the season. Well, I blame a commentator for saying that, for me getting that wrong, because I heard a commentator last week say that he's a Spanish international. So it just shows you how little these commentators know. You can't even rely on them to give you factual information. I don't really watch much international football, to be honest, only the tournaments. I can't see qualifiers and friendlies. I just can't stand them, to be honest with you. So
And the point just made there was not an unimportant one either. Kyle, £100 million signing and has only started coming good of late. Yet I haven't heard the massive criticism and the outcry about how much of an idiot Guardiola has to be and what were they thinking and why did they sign him and he's a flop. Like happens so frequently when Manchester United signs a player, he's got a target on his back from the day that he walks through the building. Yeah, I just
yeah,
have a rant about that.
yeah, I think according to what I'm reading here, it was £77 million, making him the most expensive defender in footballing history.
Yeah.
So maybe it's close to €100 million, but still a
Yeah,
very, very
potentially so.
expensive player indeed. But I suppose two things. Obviously, Manchester United are scrutinised a lot more heavily than Man City, and two, Man City are winning, so it doesn't get
True.
highlighted as much.
That's true. That's true.
Um, yeah, and he says, yeah, Grealish definitely was £100 million. I mean, he's just warming the bench, which is absolutely right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He has had periods of starting for Man City, but he's going back to the bench again at the moment now. I seen him celebrating one of the goals today, wearing a bib, so that sort of says it all, really. Um, yeah, but Man City, I mean, they won the treble last season, they won the league this season, and they're probably going to win a league and cup double. So you can't really get at the manager for signing, you know, players for that kind of money and them not starting or not doing well, because it doesn't really matter if you're winning.
Yeah.
At United, when you sign Anthony for 86 million and he flops, it matters because you're in eighth position.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
No, fair
um,
point.
Danny here says Anthony's refusal to play left back against Arsenal and against Liverpool in the FA Cup, with both reactions going viral, may have a part to play on him being benched, and rightly so. You play for the Bads, not yourself. Yeah, e- even he didn't. I suppose he didn't refuse to play in those positions. He did it anyway after complaining. To me, he should be grateful that he's even playing at all. So him yapping about playing left back is absolutely ridiculous. Um, yeah, yeah, I think it was he scored against Liverpool in the FA Cup quarter final, and he thought he was a superstar then. And then the manager made a tactical change, or somebody had to come off, so he moved him to left back, and he was raging, absolutely raging. You're like, do you think you are? You just do a job for the team. He doesn't really do much to warm himself to the supporters and the media, really, does he?
Unfortunately,
Um,
not.
so yeah, I think there's zero chance of him playing in the cup final unless there's an injury crisis again. So we went through who we think is going to play, and it'll be that's who I think his 11 is going to be. Onana, uh, Dallo, Varane, Martinez, Wan-Bissaka, um, Casemiro, Amrabat, Menu, Bruno, Ahmad, and Garnacho. I think that'll be more or less the team. he might just bring a surprise or two. But yeah, that's more or less what I would go with as well, because I want United to be defensive and compact and make it difficult for Man City and play on the counter attack. If he plays Hoyland, absolutely not against that at all, because we need to have that threat as well.
Mm.
And he has been in decent form of late. I certainly don't want to see Rashford on the pitch. I certainly don't want Lindelof playing either. I don't think he's going to play because he's been injured for quite a while now, and he might be back in training, but was not on the bench today, so I don't see that happening. Yeah, so we've decided that Ryan here says no Holland, Chris Mark. We've decided that we're just going to go with what Ten Hag has done the last two games, which is use Holland from the bench and play Bruno as a false nine. But if anyone wants to argue with me and say that Holland should play, I'm not going to argue back. I'd be quite happy with that
Absolutely
scenario
not.
as well.
He deserves it for sure. Yeah, like you say, Kyle. Yeah, we covered it earlier. It's more we're thinking what might actually happen in reality versus what we necessarily think should happen. Hoyland, yeah, we would not complain about him starting at all.
I can see
Definitely
the
not.
arguments for and against.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I just want to have as many midfielders on the pitch as possible in the game against City at Wembley. Um,
Park the
um,
bus. Just park the bus.
absolutely, yeah. Danny says City like to play narrow with their wingers, so we need to be compact and stifle their threat on the edge of the box. Absolutely, we cannot allow Phil Foden to get a shot away. We have to close him down. You remember in the derby at the Etihad there a couple of months ago, he went past Lindelof like he wasn't there, and then he just unleashed a rocket into the far left corner, and you're like, oh, you cannot allow him to do that. You have to close him down.
Yeah, he's pure
Um,
quality. Ryan's comment is what we talked about earlier. I think Kyle talking about McTominay. Yeah, we were saying the same thing earlier that we think that Amrabat can give us can give what McTominay gives in terms of breaking up play and putting himself about, but in a slightly less erratic kind of a way, where he's slightly less likely to give away early bookings and potentially even a red card.
yeah, like I was saying earlier, that McTominay's greatest strength is in the opponent's box, getting on the end of crosses and pullbacks, arriving late in the box, scoring goals. But what we need from a midfielder in this game, uh, uh, from a defensive midfielder in this game, is someone who can break up play. And I think Amrabat is better than McTominay at that. Um, McTominay isn't his strength is not breaking up play, and in the game against City, he's going to be playing as a number six in and around that zone. So if it's a choice between Amrabat and McTominay to play that position, then I would go with Amrabat. McTominay again today was absolutely anonymous, and he probably had before United scored, he had United's best chance on the counter attack, and he sliced it over the bar. I mean, Bruno played the ball out to him. He was in acres of space on the right hand side. All he had to do was just play it across the keeper into the far corner, and he couldn't even find the target. It was absolutely abysmal. And McTominay has been, since he came back from injury, he has been anonymous. He's got 10 goals this season. I have to give it to him, and I think we should cash in on that. There'll be clubs in the Premier League would love to have a midfielder who could score 10 goals. So there'd be teams out there who in the Premier League who might offer 30 or 40 million for him, and I would snap their hands off, because Jim Radcliffe has talked again and again and again about PSR rules and wanting to abide by those, and so many cuts have been made at United, too many employees and all this. Another thing that he's done is that usually when United play in a cup final at Wembley, all the players' family get their travel, their expenses, and their match ticket all paid for by the club. Well, Radcliffe's not going to do that. The players' families can find their own way to the game, buy their own tickets, and the players are raging about that as well. But so Radcliffe is looking to, to cut cut the expenditure as much as possible and not
Mm.
waste money. Uh, so it's it. I think what the difference is, the Glazers didn't like to spend money, and because they just want to take the money out of the club and don't want to put as little into it as possible. This is all about their bank balance. What Radcliffe is just trying to have, he's trying to first of all abide by the financial rules of the Premier League, and have more money to spend in the transfer market this summer. So he's doing it for different reasons, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I know exactly.
Um,
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and some people will argue that the Glazers did spend, and on times they did. It's just
Not
obviously.
their own money though.
Oh,
Um,
exactly. 100% right. Never their own money, exactly, and misspent. Never their own money, and they spent it on the wrong things and trusted the wrong people to spend that money. But again, they didn't care because it wasn't their own money, like you said anyway, Kyle. So they didn't have anything to lose. Um, but yeah, I would argue misspent whatever was spent. And
yeah,
there was plenty spent, but not spent well. And
yeah.
hopefully Radcliffe
Y-
and those guys will start spending well.
And Ratcliffe, of course, has put in his own money, even just to buy that 27% stake in the club, and
True.
he's pumping money, pumping 300 million so far into the infrastructure of the club as well. So he's willing to spend his own money, but wants to stop wasting money, on unnecessary employees who are not fit for purpose, and having a bloated squad and all the rest, and
Well,
paying two.
I think
I
that's
know,
it. And I think that's a good point, Kyle. Sorry, not to cut across you, but I think that's a good point. Is that without being too harsh about the thing, you have a look at the performances that we've been putting in, and do those players deserve to be getting lots of perks and rewards for what?
no,
So
no,
exactly. So without being too cold about it, and maybe that setup is the standard in the Premier League, and that's a perk of just being a Premier League footballer. But I would argue, well, actually, no, we should be there should be incentives for players to play well, and actually, when they're not performing and they're not doing their job, there should be disincentives or ways for to say, well, actually, you know what, you haven't earned these perks, so actually, we're not going to give you them until you earn them. So yeah, I wouldn't disagree with Radcliffe on that one. I have to say.
yeah. And another thing that's really irked him is paying huge transfer fees and wages for players in the 29, 30, 31 bracket, which United have done in recent times, and have continued to do in the Ten Hag era. Casemiro and Varane being examples of that. Oh, I know Varane didn't come in under Ten Hag, but he's an example of that as well in recent seasons. Ericsson has come in, albeit for free, but you're again you're he's a player that was in his 30s, and um, Casemiro. That was I think that's the one that Radcliffe always uses as an example of poor business by United. 70 million for a 30-year-old and paying him 350,000 a week. That's really bad business. And now you've seen you get one good season out of him, and now he's done. That's
Yeah,
just, and United
yeah.
have done this far too often. Uh,
It just to me it's a lack of forward planning, it's a lack of proper scouting, it's a lack of long-term thinking, it's a lack of having any joint up thinking where like we talked about philosophies, it's a lack of anybody thinking in the future and saying what are the pieces of this puzzle that we need to put together. It's just sticking plasters here, sticking plasters there. He was a good player, he's got a big reputation, we'll throw him in, he can do a job for a while. Sure, if it works out short term, all right. We'll think about the future when it arrives. Cross that bridge when it comes to it. It's that that's what it says to me. It's a lack of actual foresight and thought and joint up thinking, and it's just a lack of a plan, for want of a better
yeah,
word to put it. It's just no plan. Just kind of do what happens, snap decision at the time, reactive, no plan, and that's definitely we don't want that anymore.
and Radcliffe obviously cares because he's now put football people into football roles. Imagine that,
Exactly. I
and
know.
not
I know. Crazy
not
thought.
not bankers and accountants. So hopefully, better decisions will be made, and there will be more joined up thinking, um, and obviously a plan going forward, which is something that we've lacked ever since Alex Ferguson retired. Um, yeah, but as I was going to say, the honeymoon period is going to be over once this FA Cup final ends for Jim Radcliffe. They've got they've got goodwill from the supporters because they're not the Glazers, and they've done the right thing so far. But when it comes to selecting managers and players, they're going to be under pressure to get those decisions right. And this is when the real work starts as soon as that cup
Absolutely.
final ends.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so just want to come to a few comments have been coming in. Um, Danny says he'd play Highland off the bench in the cup final. Two goals against tired defences in two games. Of course, we need to pray Man City defence get tired playing against us, but I think that's hopeful. Yeah, that was what I was saying earlier. Um, it seems good bringing Hoyland off the bench at the moment, but we might not be in the game by the time he comes off the bench in the cup final. But let's see. Ryan says, "Are you guys like me? It all comes down to the FA Cup final. If he win, Ten Hag gets another season. If he doesn't, I think it's time to move on." I'm just going to come to that. Yeah, at the end of the show. And Simon here, he's a Man City supporter, says you won't recognise the United squad in 2 years, but that's required. Not being funny, just honest. Oh yeah, absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I imagine in 2 years'
Totally.
time,
I hope
only
so.
about
Hope so.
I think only about 4 or 5 of these players will still be there in 2 years. And like we seen when Klopp come in to Liverpool to take over from Brandon Rodgers, the squad changed drastically in the first 2 or 3 years. Danny here says not qualifying for Europe this season means the whole squad will get a pay cut 25%, and probably deserve an even bigger cut to be honest. Uh, Yeah, that happens all the time when United don't qualify for Europe, which Ronaldo wasn't happy about. A season out of Europe will be good for cutting down the squad. Yeah, but the thing is, one of the drawbacks to losing out in European football is the loss of that match revenue. Uh, you know, United could potentially playing, if they're in the Europa League or the Europa Conference League, they would probably make it to the knockout stages. You're looking at 6 or 7 home games there, and think of the match revenue you'd be getting from those home games. So all that's going to be lost now, and this will impact the budget as well. So something to keep in mind. And I don't. Well, we can still qualify for Europe by winning the FA Cup final as well. So at the moment, we're not going to be in Europe next season, but if we win the cup final, we'll be in the Europa League. So we're not going to be in the Europa League then. So Mason Mount needs to score the winner in the final to justify that season of his, because honestly, I wasn't expecting much to begin with. But bloody hell, he did absolutely nothing, mostly down to injury, of course. In kind of March, April time when he came off the bench, he done really well in cameos. The most obvious one being scoring that goal with his left foot against Brentford was a really well taken goal. I thought when he came on against Liverpool, he did well. Against Chelsea, he did well. He just needs to stay fit, and hopefully he doesn't turn into the next Michael Owen or Keane Dyer and just spends the rest of his career on the treatment table. Hopefully he can get fit and get back to the Mason Mount that won the Champions League at Chelsea. That's definitely the man we want to see at United.
And
Um,
I've been disappointed. I really like Mason Mount, and I think when he came in, I was quite excited about him. And yeah, he hasn't had a good season. So I'm really hoping he can keep himself fit next year and improve. Yeah, I quite like Mount.
uh, Danny says it's factual that any season in the past that United failed to qualify for Europe, they spent more, but this summer we aren't in that position due to FAP. But Varane Martial is a start. Yeah, Varane Martial obviously leaving on a free
Yeah,
at the end of the season. There'll be many more going. Yeah, the Glazers tend when we're out of the Champions League, that's when they'd spend the most to get back into the Champions League. But obviously the club is going to be run a lot different now. Um, we should have a similar budget every summer now, and you know, eh, you know, Radcliffe wants to win the Premier League. He doesn't just want to qualify for the Champions League. That's obvious. But I want to come back to Ryan's comment here. Are you guys like me? It all comes down to the FA Cup final. If he win, Ten Hag gets another season. If he doesn't, then I think it's time to move on. I think it's time to move on anyway. I don't think a manager should be judged on one game. Um, we've talked at length on this podcast about how poor the season has been. Being United finishing eighth, their worst finish in the Premier League season, it's just totally unacceptable. And winning the cup final does not make up for that. I know you're in football, you're only as good as your last game, but I would still be in the camp of moving Ten Hag on at the end of the season, no matter what happens in this game. And more importantly, there's no way the new hierarchy with Wilcox and Brailsford uh, should be thinking we, that a manager should survive based on the result of one game. I would like to think that they're more intelligent than that. That they're doing they're assessing every single match and assessing training, which I know they've been doing, and coming to a conclusion based on 6 months of evidence, not based on one game. This is what Exa Woodward would do, and Joe Glazer. They make decisions based on emotion, like beating PSG in the Champions League last 16. Oh, let's make Solskjaer permanent manager, which wasn't the plan. yet they're just based on the result of one match, they just totally change course. I would like to think that the new hierarchy is not going to do that. They're going to stick the. Hopefully they've made a decision already, and they're going to stick with that no matter what happens in the cup final. And I believe that's the right thing to do. What do you think, Chris?
100%, 120% agree, Kyle. Absolutely agree with you. Yeah, I've said it myself in the past. You know, we're fans, and us guys are allowed to be emotional, and we're allowed to love somebody one week and hate them the next, or love them 1 minute and hate them the next minute. That's what a fan's prerogative is. That's not the job of somebody running a football club, like you said, Kyle. I would like to believe that they have a plan. In fact, I would like to believe they've made their decision weeks ago. I'd like to believe their decision's already been made, whether that's to keep him or not keep him. I like to believe they've already made that decision, and what's happened in recent games, whether they won or lost or played well or not, is little because what's 3 or 4 games in the scheme of an entire season that they've had, or 2 years of evidence. They may only be in a short period of time, but they will also have walked into that club and got evidence from the previous 2 years that we don't hear, that the media doesn't report. So they will know everything that's happened over the last 2 years, and they should be building on what they've heard from the inside, as well as what they've then seen themselves since they came in. And I'd like to believe they've actually already made their decision anyway. And irrespective of what happens next week, the decision's already been made, yes or no. So yeah, I completely agree with you. My opinion, where I think he should stay or not, I'm not sure. If you were to push me, I would say he should probably go. Not because I think he's a bad manager. In fact, I think he could go and he could do well at another club. I feel like the structure at the club has been so bad for so long that he's been set up to fail. He's probably maybe been a bit headstrong in terms of pushing his philosophy when he should have waited for a bit longer and been a bit more pragmatic, and that's definitely on him. Some poor signings like Anthony that we allude to, that have to be, at least some blame has to be put on him for those. So I think in a way, my rationale for him going is just we need a clean slate, and I feel like that's probably the best rationale, is to say he's too much part of what's been a poor regime, whether that's his fault or not, and maybe it's time to move on. But if, and like I say, this is where I like to believe that the professional set of guys like Will Cox and Dave Brailsford and Jim Radcliffe and the other guys they're bringing in have taken all the evidence into account, and if they decide they're keeping him, I will give them the faith that they've done that for what they think are the right reasons, and I'll back him and say, right, hopefully now under a new regime he's going to be successful. But who knows? I can see the argument either way. But coming back to the question and the comments and what you said, Kyle, yeah, there's no way that they should make it on one match. I really hope that they're not doing that. So yeah,
Yeah, that would be complete nonsense. To base a manager's future on one game, and I don't think that the new hierarchy will do that. That is something that Edward would do though, and has done.
absolutely.
Um, Now Ryan is asking, who do you think the next United manager should be? He says, I always feel United managers should be British or Irish. I don't think foreign managers get the club as much as homegrown managers do. And Donny here mentions De Zerbi. He thinks he's going to Italy. I think so as well. He's obviously got a job lined up because today was his last game for Brighton. I don't want him at Old Trafford. I'm not sold on him. Um, Now, who I'm leaning towards, like I know there's big name managers like Thomas Tuchel have been linked. Um, the Inter Milan manager Simone Inzaghi has been talked about. He's done really well. Wouldn't be against that at all. Thomas Tuchel I'm very weary of. Because he hasn't really done that well at Bayern Munich, all things considered. He's obviously the first Bayern manager to not win the league in a very long time. He's very confrontational. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. And his style of football isn't exactly sexy, as Chelsea fans will tell you. And he's short term as well. I think what I've been hearing is that Radcliffe wants a young manager and a long term manager. And if that's the case, then I'd be leaning towards Kieran McKenna. He's got back to back promotions with Ipswich. Of course, he's been a coach under Solskjaer at United. He's been the assistant manager under Mourinho at United. And I think that he's still only 37 and he's achieved so much in his career. I just think he might be the next Sabi Alonso. He might be a manager that's just got it all, and I would be willing to take a gamble on him. If it was under the Woodward Glazer regime, I'd think I wouldn't even waste your time, Kieran, and come to United. But under this new structure, I think he might have a real chance of succeeding. How do you see it, Chris?
Kyle, I find it hard to disagree with you. I have to say, I agree with you. I think a few months ago, the way I thought that was crazy. Kier McKenna flipping act. No, we need a big manager, but I think that makes sense. And given what you said earlier about Wilcox and about United having a different approach where they now have a kind of a philosophy. I hate using that word, but a philosophy that happens at
A
the
style, a style.
style. Good word, good word. Style's better. A style at the kind of director of football level, and that the manager then becomes more of a coach. I think that Kieran McKenna, being that he is a younger manager, a young coach, whatever way you want to call it, and will be coming in his first big job and a massive jump, let's be honest, too, from Ipswich to Manchester United, but with the greatest respect to Ipswich. But I think that somebody young is a bit more moldable in that sense and will have less strong thoughts than the likes of a Thomas Tuchel may have, or a Mourinho would have had, to give one of the more extreme examples where they want to dictate the pace. So actually, yeah, I can see how Kieran McKenna might get on well with the structure and the new structure of the club, as well as the fact that he's obviously got a lot of talent and already got amazing experience. And again, he may not have had the job of being Manchester United manager, but he's been around the club. He gets the pressure. He understands the culture. He understands what he's up against. He's watched his colleagues take the flack, and he's watched the scrutiny they've been under and the stress. So actually, even though I'm saying it's a big jump, he's kind of already been there in a sense. Maybe not in the firing line, but he's seen it. He knows what it'll involve. So yeah, I really like Kieran McKenna. I also think another name on the list there, not saying that he's necessarily the right man, but I like what Thomas Frank has done at Brentford. I mean, I generally like to see, and again, McKenna fits in this mold. A Mourinho fit into this mold too. Back in the day, I like to see managers doing well in with less resource. I like them showing that it's them that's making the difference. They're the talent. It's them. It's the work they're doing that's the reason the club's successful. And they're not just the right man at the right time, happen to be riding the crest of the wave that's around them. And I think McKenna's done that, and I think Thomas Frank's done that too. And another name that I think that has done that too is Unai Emery. So I like those guys because I like to see guys who've worked with less resource at Aston Villa, at Brentford, at Ipswich, and have punched above their weight. That shows me it's them that's making the difference. So I like those guys. And yeah, Kieran McKenna, biased. He's a Man United man. I'm more biased. He's from Northern Ireland here too. So I would be very much behind Kieran McKenna for sure. I like him.
Yeah, I think it was the journalist Mike McGrath from the Telegraph who mentioned Thomas Frank as being on Manchester United's list. So that'll be interesting to see if they go down that road. I imagine they've probably got a few people in mind, and they might interview them all and then make a decision if they do indeed sack Ten Hag. Um, Danny here says he's still behind Ten Hag, and I get others' reasons for wanting him out. But having said that, if he was moved on, I'd like to see Hansi Flick. Hansi Flick won the treble at Bayern, so that's a pretty good CV. Although he didn't work out for him at Germany, and he was sacked, so you can make the argument that he's on a downward curve. We we've talked about it a lot, Chris. That we want someone who's on an upward trajectory in their career.
Yeah,
Not someone
I
who's
think
just
so.
just been sacked in a job that they failed in. Um,
And if you think about it, Kyle, that was the reason why we liked Ten Hag when his name was being touted, because we saw him in that sense. It hasn't panned out, but we saw him in that on that trajectory. We liked that, and the same with Solskjaer to maybe to a lesser degree. But it was young manager, less experience. Didn't have the ego Mourinho had, and maybe we all probably felt a bit burned by Mourinho kind of going off the rails a wee bit at the end. And so yeah, I think that is what we like to see, is somebody on
yeah,
that upward trajectory for sure.
yeah, because in the past, Van Gaal was very much a '90s man, and I know he done reasonably well at Bayern in 2010. But I think he's more, yeah, he was yesterday's man really when he came to United. Um, and Mourinho, I mean, the season before, he had been sacked at Chelsea when they were in 15th in the league. So that was an upward trajectory, was it? So that's why I favour a manager who's done well in the most recent season. Uh, that's just my opinion, anyway. Danny here says 100% with you, Kyle, in the sense if United want a younger profile of manager who's got history with the club, than McKenna 100%, but I think it might be too big for him at the moment. Yeah, I could see that argument as well.
Yeah, no, it's fair. But it's
It's
a lot.
definitely a risk.
It is. It's biting off a lot. Like I said, it's a big jump, to be fair.
But the good thing for him is that he- he's used to working at United in a coaching capacity. He's done every coaching job at United apart from the head coach or manager. So, um, and he's done so well elsewhere. So, it will be an interesting one. He's a man in demand, no doubt about that, because Brighton apparently want him to replace De Zerbi. Chelsea are looking at him if they decide to sack Pochettino. They might not do that because they finished the season strongly, 5 wins on the bounce. So you got Chelsea and Brighton have got McKenna on their list. So if United want them, they might need to act pretty swiftly. He's a manager that's going places.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's great to see someone from our country doing so well. And
You
it'd be even better if he did it at United.
you don't fancy Graham Potter then, Kyle? No.
No, and certainly don't fancy Gareth Southgate either, for that matter. I don't. I think they're all wrong for Manchester United. They're not good fits. Graham Potter, albeit Chelsea were a basket case at last season, and anyone would have struggled there. But even in his interviews at Chelsea when they're losing games, he just came across as far too nice a guy. So I think he doesn't have the right personality to be at United. You talked about Mourinho's arrogance. Mourinho, if you set his style of football aside, and where he was at in terms of his career at that time, Mourinho had the perfect personality to be United manager because
Absolutely.
he's arrogant and he calls himself the special one. He's not going to be overawed by being Manchester United manager. So he's
A larger than life character, you could say.
yeah. Whereas Graham Potter and Gareth Southgate are nowhere near that. Now Gareth Southgate has done reasonably well with England, probably their most successful manager in 30 years, getting to a semi-final and a final, but he hasn't got over the line. And in club football, he's been pretty poor, and he hasn't managed a club since 2009. Was that 15 years ago? And got relegated with Middlesbrough. That that's not a
Long time ago. Yeah.
that's not a recipe for taking over at United. Um, so uninspiring is how I would call Potter and Southgate, to be honest with you. So yeah, I would be happy with Hansi Flick or Simone Inzaghi, that type of manager. Thomas Tuchel probably less excited about for the reasons I listed. McKenna would probably be someone I would lean towards at the moment. If we're going for, I hate this word, but project manager. If we're going for a project manager, we should go with Kieran McKenna. Someone that we're just going to give him time under the new structure. Give him like Arteta has done. Okay, Arteta has not got over the line, but he's
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 done very
finished.
well, it has to be said.
He's finished second 2 years in a row to a club that's facing 115 financial fair play charges. To me, finishing second in the Premier League is like finishing first these days because you're up against a club that's essentially cheating, really.
I just wouldn't say that too loud, Kyle, because you have a lot of Liverpool fans then who will that will be mana to them, and they'll absolutely love that. So yeah.
No, Man City are legitimate champions, and Liverpool finished second. Yeah. Um, Danny says Allegri, you feel, but now I think he comes under the category of yesterday's man as well. Um, Now he's done well at Juventus in the past, but in his current spell at Juventus, he's just been sacked, and he got nowhere near winning the league. So I wouldn't be bringing him in at this moment in time. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, there's no obvious candidate this time. When when each of the other managers have been sacked, we've kind of known who was going to take over. Now we don't. We have no idea. Everybody talks about Van Gaal, another Dutch manager, FA Cup final. When Van Gaal was making his way up the steps to collect a trophy, it was announced that Mourinho was going to be the Manchester United manager. I hated that in a way because it was very
I think it was
disrespectful.
cool. I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was a nice way to do business. I have to say, I don't think it was a good way to do business.
They did obviously United didn't officially announce it, but it got leaked out. As you
Yeah.
know, Manchester United under the Glazers just leaks left, right, and centre, just like the roof.
Yeah.
Um, the Niagara Falls of the north of England. Yeah, he come into the trophy room with the FA Cup in his hand, and no journalist was interested in talking about the game. They just wanted to say, "Did you know that you're going to be replaced by Jose
Uh,
Mourinho after
I
this
think
game?"
that's really bad. It's really bad. Yeah, I have to feel sorry for him that happened. That's bad for him.
People have said, "Is the same thing going to happen to Ten Hag?" And and the first thing that I said was, "Well, he's not going to come into the press conference room with the trophy in his hand." So there's going to be a difference there immediately.
You're so optimistic, Kyle. So optimistic. Oh, I don't know. Yeah,
I hope
well,
he
I'm not.
does. I hope he does. Like, but
I'll not
I don't think
disagree.
so.
Yeah, I have to say, there's you always hear rumors and leaks, and the fact that we've heard nothing tells me that either um, the NEOS team has been incredible at keeping their cards close to chest, or B, they are actually going to stick with him, and that's why we haven't heard anything.
Yeah, they, they've done a good job of keeping it quiet if they have made a decision, or maybe they are just going to wait till the season's over. Then the hierarchy will get together and make a decision. I believe that the Radcliffe, Brailsford, and Wilcox were at the game today. Wilcox is going to be at every game, let's face it, and that's part of his job. But Radcliffe was in Monaco for the. I think that's where he lives, and the Grand Prix was on today in Monaco, but he's obviously still doing interviews about United. Um, but I believe that the entire board met up in Monaco, and well, the Ineos board, if you like. So Radcliffe, Jean Claude Blanc, Brailsford, Jason Wilcox, and I think one other person who's it's like one of those employees that most people don't really know. I think 5 or 6 of them met up in Monaco in midweek, and obviously we're talking about the future of the club. I don't know if they maybe the journalists don't know yet, but maybe that was the day that they made a call
May
on the
have
new
done,
manager.
yeah, may have done.
But that news hasn't filtered out yet. And even if they didn't, they probably will have another meeting at the end of the season, and then they'll make a call. I imagine that we'll not get a announcement on the manager front, immediately after the game. It might be on the
I wouldn't
Monday
think
morning or
so.
the Tuesday morning after the game. We'll get some kind of news, but they need to make a decision quickly so we can start planning for next season. Um,
Like I say, I would like to believe. I would like to believe that by now they have made a decision. I'd like to believe that they've made a decision. In fact, I would say I don't see at this point in time really what they would be waiting for anymore. Do you know what I mean? The one game, like we said, shouldn't make any difference at all. So all the evidence they're ever going to get, they kind of should already have. So I would like to believe that they've already made a decision.
yeah, I think that's very, very possible. I don't think they're going to base their decision on the FA Cup final. They don't strike me as those type of people.
Wouldn't
They
like to
seem to
think
be,
so.
they don't make. Radcliffe did not become a multi-billionaire by making decisions based on emotion. You can
Absolutely not.
guarantee that.
Absolutely not. Exactly. Absolutely not.
Donny here says, I find it infuriating seeing how the Premier League celebrate Man City's achievements. Yeah, Sky Sports and
Yeah,
all the rest of the media,
it's not right.
and yet they have these 115 charges hanging over them. Yeah, it's very strange, and we're not going to. But the reason why we haven't had a resolution to that or a decision is the Man City frustrating the process. Not cooperating. Um, getting attorneys involved and just slowing it down and delaying. So we're they did this with UEFA as well. So we're not going to get a decision on that until at least the end of next season. So it will be interesting because we've seen Forest and Everton being punished with points deductions, and they only had one charge in those cases. So if Man City were to walk away scot free again here, like the UEFA case, people are, yeah, I don't. The fans of the other 19 teams are just not going to accept that. They're just going to scream corruption. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. So United very much underdogs going into the FA Cup final. Let's hope we can do a Wigan and upset the apple cart and win that game.
It's not an
I was
analogy I ever thought would be making, Kyle, but I like the sentiment.
um, I was going to say maybe we could win on penalties, but I wouldn't even back United to be level with City after 120 minutes. So that would be an achievement in itself, even getting to the penalty shootout.
Yeah.
Um, but we have shown in recent years that we have been good in penalty shootouts. Now, for a long period we weren't, but I think we've won the last few. Obviously, most recently against Coventry in the semi-final, which should never have went to a shootout. Briggs sake. I mean, only United under Ten Hag could throw away a 3-0 lead to the team 8 in the Championship, and then nearly lost it as well. VAR came to our rescue at the end of extra time. I think his toenail was offside, and it was ruled out.
That's
Uh,
That's VAR in a nutshell.
but what I hated about that situation was a lot of people were saying, why didn't they just give Coventry the goal? Uh, you know, that's the romance of the game. A big upset like that happening, big giant killing, a championship team beating Man United in the FA Cup semi final. Why didn't they just allow it? They're only saying that because it's Manchester United. If it was anyone else, they'd say the laws of the game have to be applied. So now because it's United against Coventry in the FA Cup semi final, the pundits and the media were suggesting that forget about the offside rule, just give them the goal because of the romance of the game. It was
It's just
absolute
silly.
tripe.
It's just silly.
Uh, yeah, Danny here says, don't forget it's the automated offside next season. Yeah, I'm very happy about that, which should
That's
quicken the
brilliant.
process and
That's about
eliminate.
time.
That's what UEFA have implemented already. It always takes
Long overdue.
the PGMOL. Initially, they always say we're not going to do things how UEFA do it, and then after a year, they have to admit that that's the better system, and we are going to have to do it.
I know. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's about time though. It's yeah. You're right, Carl. It is the better system, and it's long, long overdue. As I always say, Sky Sports seem to have nailed 20 years ago or however long it was ago. Knowing if a goal was offside or not. It's unbelievable to me that VAR still can't get it right. After all these years. So it's about time that they had an automatic system. Yeah. Yeah. Good to see.
And he mentions FIFA's review trials. Yeah, there's going to be trials from FIFA about teams getting, like in other sports, where in tennis, for example, the player can request a review on a particular decision. Well, FIFA are now going to be trialing that the teams can ask for a review of a decision, and if they're right, then they get to keep the review, and then if they're wrong, then they lose a review and they go down to 2 or whatever. Um, so rather than the VAR intervening when he wants to,
Hmm.
the the bench of each team get to request a review if they think the decision's wrong.
I
So
think that makes sense. I think that makes
yeah,
sense.
so that'll be interesting. Yeah, 2 challenges and a half. If your review is successful, then you keep the challenge. Yeah, similar to tennis, really.
Yeah,
Um,
makes
but
sense.
anyway, we will wrap it up there, Chris. It's been a pleasure as always. It's been a dreadful season, but we've ended it on a high in terms of the Premier League winning the last 2 games. But finishing eighth is still a disgrace. That's hopefully we can finish this season with silverware, but doesn't look very likely. If we were playing, a mid-table Premier League team in the final, I would be optimistic. But we're playing one of the best teams in Europe, and I don't really see it happening. But hopefully I'm wrong. But
Yeah, me too.
please, everybody,
I agree.
like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast if whether you're on watching on YouTube, you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, Overcast, and get more of your comments in, and I will reply to as many of those as possible. And yeah, Chris, I think you obviously join me at least once a month, and I think it was you did the 38th game of last season as well, if I remember, and it was just before a cup final with Man City, so getting a bit of deja vu feeling,
I
today.
just like to, I always like to get in at those kind of important moments. You know what I mean, Kyle? I save myself for those moments. No, no, no. It's a pleasure as always. Yep, I've enjoyed being on as I always do. Yep, I'm sure that'll certainly not be the last time. Yeah, yeah. It's been a not a great season, like you said, Kyle. But it's over now. We finished it on something of a high. And yeah, it's going to be a tough game next week. I'm not going to be not be betting the mortgage on it, but at the same time, it's a game of football. Anything can happen. So fingers crossed, and I'll still be hoping that we can get the trophy. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Anyway, take care, mate. Thank you.
All right, I'll see you later.